This is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
Xenoarchaeology and the Bible. Yeah, that's a thing. And it's this week on A View from the Bunker. Space is not the final frontier, but there are those who want you to think it is. 75 years ago, something crashed in the desert near Roswell, New Mexico. An industry has grown up to sell the idea that the pilots were extraterrestrials. We want you to know the truth. For a limited time, we're making available a special offer featuring the groundbreaking book, The Day the Earth Stands Still. This book shows step by step how the occult teachings of Madame Blavatsky and Aleister Crowley grew into the ancient aliens hypothesis of the modern UFO movement. It's our Gilbert House Roswell special. For just $35, we'll send you The Day the Earth Stands Still, plus our DVD sets, The Best of Sci Friday Volumes 1 and 2. It's a $65 value for just $35. Take advantage of the Gilbert House Roswell special for a limited time only, and you'll only find it at our store, online at gilberthouse.org. A couple of the ologies that you might not normally hear connected to the Bible. I mean, when you think of the Bible, you think theology, archaeology, but what about cosmology and xenoarchaeology? Welcome to A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. Joining me this week is a gentleman who interviewed me a week ago. Now we're returning the favor to direct some attention his way because he's doing some really unique things using video to reach those who might not normally sit still for a sermon. And that is what we need. We need more of the outreach gets beyond the choir. He's the host and producer of a video series. The YouTube channel is called Project Revelation. His website, detoxbabylon.com. We welcome Michael Stibbs to the program for the first time. Michael, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely, Derek. And really just thank you for this opportunity. I really do believe this is going to be an awesome conversation. So thank you.
Well, appreciated the work that you've done. Again, it's different, and I mean that in a good way. It's like, our friend Trey Smith, whose video output is very different from what people would expect from someone with a biblical worldview and tackling topics that are not normally addressed in church. So, and you likewise are dealing with some interesting ologies that pastors don't normally address in church, and this is not meant as a slam at pastors because their time is limited. We've had a couple of pastors as good friends, and I know from talking with them a little bit of the kind of demands that they have on their time, above and beyond what they have to commit to their wives and children or husbands and children. So it's difficult for them to put in the extra study to get into the weird stuff that Sharon and I get into, that you get into, and so on. Project Revelation, how did this get started, and what sort of topics do you try to address?
Yeah, so Project Revelation, it's been, it's kind of been a progression over time. But I got into, I was an editor for a Christian television show, and I was editing the show, producing and directing it, and doing some writing for it as well. And I just decided, like, hey, I'm gonna start putting out some videos. And at first, of course, they're not very good, and we're just trying to always get better. But my whole thing was, I'm 42 right now. I got saved when I was 30, but before I was saved, I was highly into the alien topic. Got saved, figured all of that is just nonsense, I just forsake all of it, for a while. And then 6 months to a year after I get saved, the Lord brings it back into my life in a major way. And so that's a long time ago. But then I end up, doing this show, this other Christian show, developing it, writing for it. And the Lord said, you need to take some of the stuff that, you have been researching and the connections you're making and, start contributing. There's you, Josh Peck, Steve Quayle, L.A. Marzulli, the forerunners, the forefathers of all of this stuff, and I came across you guys, because I had it's really interesting how the way I got into this is I was 6 months saved, and I'm sitting in front of a young gentleman who is pouring out his heart to me. He did not know God, and he had a life-changing UFO sighting. And I didn't know how to answer him. And I told him, I said, man, let me look into this and let me get back to you. And so my mind started to get blown. I came across Steve Quayle. Eventually I came across Josh Peck and you with your books that you guys have written together. And there was a lot more to all of this than anybody could ever imagine. And as it's, now the past 4 years, it's been unfolding, and people, people aren't even scared anymore about this stuff. Like, oh yeah, we got aliens coming to our planet. Who cares? But
yeah, that's one of the things that surprised Josh and me when we wrote the book, The Day the Earth Stands Still. And viewers will know that we're offering that book now as a special at our little store here, because as we're recording this, we're essentially the 75th anniversary of whatever it was that crashed in the desert near Roswell, New Mexico back in 1947, which sort of changed the paradigm here 75 years ago of what we thought about life in the cosmos, life in outer space. What was it about that particular topic before you got saved that you found so fascinating?
Well, at the risk of sounding weird, I had a reoccurring dream pretty much my whole life. And it was a little bit different each time, but it was having to do with, I would see UFOs in my dreams. And I was playing in a band at that time. I grew up in near LA, Los Angeles, Hollywood. And I was playing in a band, and, everybody that I knew was playing in bands. Everybody was doing drugs, psychedelics and stuff. I was very much I was into the new age mindset. Like, I believed that there were going to be aliens that were going to come here and save humans. I literally believed that to be the truth. But yeah, I would have this reoccurring dream where I would be outside and I would look up at the sky and a UFO would come down, and a couple of times it would take me up. Now, this is not an abduction experience. I know for a fact these are just dreams. But something out there, or somebody that wasn't God, knew something about my future. I don't think that they knew my exact future, but they knew something about who I would become. And I figured that they were intervening through time, trying to get me, I don't know. But as we know, as we get saved and we start to look back at our past, we see the fingerprints of God all over our past. So that was what got me into it, was just these dreams I was having.
I was a huge science fiction fan when I was a kid, read all night long, way too many times, lots of hard science fiction, believing that was a better explanation for the origins of humanity and humanity's future. I envisioned a Star Trek future where, the superstition of religion would be done away with and replaced by reason and logic. How does that track with your childhood, your upbringing? Was that kind of the direction you were headed?
Absolutely. My mom, she's probably the one to credit for my salvation, because she always kept praying for me. But yeah, the way I saw the world, and my view of cosmology was very much like, we don't understand what's actually going on in the context of the whole universe. And that was my whole thing. We don't understand. And who is God? Well, God could be one of many other gods, and all these other people these other gods created planets too. And then we come to find out, of course, on the other side, once I get saved, is that this is, a quite common New Age belief, and even going into some, factions of Christianity like Mormonism. And I got to ask myself the question, where did we come up with that? Where did I come up with that? I didn't really watch anything or hear anybody say that necessarily, but I think it was these ideas that were being planted in a mind that was thinking that the God of the Bible isn't really the God of the whole universe. It's just a perspective. Now, Obviously, now I do not buy into any of that stuff. I had a radical experience with God that, in my mind, 100% proved that the God of Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham is the God. Like, there's nothing else. And so, yeah, it really does with all of this that's happening right now. I look at it, the root of the deception is cosmology, is how did we end up here? And most people, Derek, are not thinking about this stuff. Even Christians really aren't thinking about this stuff. But the average person driving to work, and they might listen to Joe Rogan for a half hour here, a half hour there, they are slowly but surely being indoctrinated into an entirely different cosmology. Mm-hmm. And that's a I don't want to say it's scary, but it's a part of the great deception, because if we can just get people to question, well, we don't really understand our cosmology. If we listen to Lou Elizondo, the one of the agents of disclosure, he'll say it all the time. He goes, well, we don't really fully comprehend physics. We don't fully comprehend why we're here. And he'll say it like, well, it's possible that we're not alone. So he's not directly saying it, but he's planting this seed. Now, what does he know on the other side? That they're slowly disclosing over time. And that's the question right there. And then when it comes to Christians, if we look at, and I credit all of you guys and Dr. Heiser with a lot of this stuff of figuring out, just the definition of Elohim and understanding that. Eric von Daniken, or I think I'm pronouncing his name correct, but we look at him and he'll tell you, oh yeah, they misinterpreted the Bible. The Elohim is a group. It's a bunch of beings and it's misinterpreted. But no, that's not even close to being the truth. When we understand grammar, they take one little thread and pull on this thread, and now Ancient Aliens is like 20 seasons in.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's all based on research that is not complete.
Yeah, no, it's no question that there's a fundamental misunderstanding or misrepresentation of the ancient Sumerian worldview. Why Mike Heiser put out the website sitchiniswrong.com, because Zechariah Sitchin is really the one responsible for putting forth this idea, which is now like received wisdom in the UFO community, that the gods of the ancient world were just space travelers. The Anunnaki were from an advanced civilization. That's not what the Sumerians believed at all. But for those who aren't really familiar with the term cosmology, what does that entail? How do we define that word?
Well, cosmology is really it's a theory of the origin of the universe, And so I did a video. It's a mini documentary. I call it The Pastor's Guide to the UFO/UAP topic, and I talk about 3 different types of cosmology. I talk about the 2 different types of Christian cosmology. The first being that God just created the heavens and the earth, and boom, we're doing what we're doing. Then there's another version of Christian cosmology that brings in the Elohim, that when God says, let us make man in our image, that the us, and this is based on Heiser, is that that God is referring to the divine council. Let us make man in our own image, and then bringing in the idea of the Elohim. And so you have 2 different types of Christian cosmology. One has the Elohim there, the other does not. And then the third type of cosmology is basically just the Big Bang, because that's what's dominating the secular scientific worldview of there was something that happened. We don't know what it was, but then boom, we're here. And why couldn't there be life on other planets? And so I hypothesize in this video, well, what if, not saying that it will happen, but what if a spaceship came down and these beings said, hey, we're your creators? Based on your view of cosmology, right, and what you believe to be true about the origin of the universe, that's going to dictate who you think these entities are. In the first Christian paradigm, if you don't understand the Elohim and you don't understand Mike Heiser's work, then boom, your religion's done. You're going with the new world alien order. Of course, if you're the secular and you believe in the Big Bang, then they've been setting you up for that. I mean, since Roswell, really, they've been setting the world up for that. But if you understand who the Elohim are, and you understand the story, there's many stories we can extrapolate from the Bible. And one of them is that Jesus, his mission is to redeem us back to Yahweh, to the real and true God, rather than the little g gods. And that is a huge part of where, if we understand that as a Christian community, by and large, then I think we can set off some of the end time events if we know this in the masses in the Christian world. And that's kind of like, I guess that's my goal. I mean, I don't only talk about the UFO and alien topic, but this is, to me, it's so clear when we go back and we look at, Genesis 6:4 and all of these weird Bible verses that don't quite fit in with the Christian narrative of how we know it, like in megachurch Christianity. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if we know that the end times play out, the book of Revelation is a scary and crazy book with fallen angels and wars in the heavens, and yet we just want to believe that, no, we're just going to go to church on Sunday and sing a Hillsong, a Hillsong song. There's so much more to the purpose of a Christian, I think, especially even right now. I think I say it quite often that there's no more important time than right now to be a Christian, shining the light of Jesus and understanding some of this stuff.
It's very interesting to me that this narrative has really ramped up since December of 2017, because again, that was 70 years after the Roswell event, and 70 is a very significant number in the ancient Near East, which of course included the world of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, down to the time of Jesus. The number 70 represented all of them, the complete set, not one left out. So 70 years after, roughly, the Roswell event, the New York Times runs this story about the Tic Tac, the 2004 USS Nimitz incident. Lou Elizondo resigns from his post with the Defense Intelligence Agency. Somehow the video gets to the New York Times, which we found out later, as Josh and I, because our book came out at the same time as the whole New York Times thing. This whole thing blew up, so we didn't have a chance to address it in our book. But we later discovered that this video that was made viral by the Times, USA Today, Fox News. I mean, Tucker Carlson does stories on this all the time. That video had been on the web since about 2007. So why 10 years later is it suddenly then just this big revelation? People who've really been serious about UFOs had known about this event for a long time. Anyway, it was beginning in 2007, or 2017 rather, and continuing now 5 years later, this continues to ramp up, where now it's no longer openly mocked in the mainstream media. It's like, boy, isn't this curious? Wow. We really need to know what these are. I mean, U.S. Congress is holding hearings on this. The Department of Defense had to release some information, which they really didn't disclose anything. But it's becoming more and more a part of the narrative over the last 5 years, where it's being mainstreamed. And even before this, back in 2012, we found that survey commissioned by Nat Geo, as they were getting ready to launch yet another cable channel about, ancient aliens, that about 36% of American adults believe that we're being visited by extraterrestrials, which, when you compare that to the number or the percentage of American adults who actually have a biblical worldview, it means there are a lot more people who believe in ET than believe in the God of the Bible. What is going on here? If we had to step back and try to analyze the playbook of the principalities and powers behind the scenes in the fallen realm, what are they doing with this narrative?
Yeah. Well, I think I flip it from what the ancient aliens say. They'll say this. They'll say, well, in the past, when these sky people came down from the sky, they didn't understand what they were seeing, so they called them gods. Now, I'm going to flip that. I'm going to say that we don't understand what we're seeing today, okay? And a part of it is secret military programs, but by and large, like I look at the Tic Tac thing, I've looked at that 1,000 times and read the story 1,000 times. That you can't explain that. You can't explain that with technology. But it's this, if in light of the book of Revelation, it really feels to me that they want to be worshiped again. And it's almost coming to like the critical mass, where the topic is getting worn out so much and so many people are talking about it. People are desensitized, but it's coming down to this worship. And really, what is worship? Is it always lifting your hands to the sky and saying, I believe in you, God? No, it's recognizing them, whoever these things are. I think they're the Elohim, and just regarding them as something that they're really not. They did it in the past. They deceived mankind. They took the worship away from Yahweh and got it on themselves, and that's got them into a lot of trouble. And we're doing the same thing today. And I know, and I'll get into, because I do believe that the deception is going to evolve here, and I'll share that because that's really interesting as well. But the age of the earth kind of, and I don't hold any like really hard beliefs on this, but I do think that there's a headline that's one day going to drop. And this headline is that there's we found a spaceship underground, and it's far beyond, all the technology we can understand. Okay. And I have this in my video too. Bob Lazar. And if you're not familiar with Bob Lazar, just a quick rundown. He was the whistleblower for Area 51, and I think it was S4, the secret military base that was supposedly reverse engineering alien craft. He has been spot on with so many things over the years. And I look at that story and I just wonder, I go back and forth on that. But one thing, he was on Joe Rogan in 2019, and Joe Rogan pressed him several times, and he didn't answer until the third time, or maybe the second time. He says, did you have any inkling of where these spaceships came from that you were trying to reverse engineer the propulsion system? And he finally says it. He finally says that a seed was planted, that it was from an archaeological dig.
Oh,
that it was old, that it was really, really old. And so in light of like myths of Atlantis, and I know that there's a lot of different theories out there of the age of the earth, as far as even within the Christian factions. Okay. And I'm not married to anyone, but I think it's a possibility that Genesis, 1 is a renewing of the earth. And there may have been, not saying there is, so I just want people to understand that, like this is me going through this stuff, but it's possible that there was another civilization, a pre-Adamic race, and this could have been a part of that, maybe, or it's just a huge deception. Regardless, this is all about xenoarchaeology, okay? If you don't mind, we can kind of take what we just learned there about Bob Lazar and talk about Skinwalker Ranch, okay? There was a leaked document called the Admiral Wilson Memo. And this is a conversation between Admiral Wilson and Eric W. Davis. Eric W. Davis was a part of NEDS with Bigelow. And we know that there is a new TV show with Skinwalker Ranch, the secret behind Skinwalker Ranch. Well, before these dudes were out there doing it on the History Channel, Bigelow was out there with his team that was funded by the government to find out what was happening on Skinwalker Ranch. Okay, so Eric W. Davis was one of the physicists involved in trying to figure out all of these portals and stuff that were opening on Skinwalker Ranch, all of these magnetic anomalies and whatnot. So there surfaces a leaked document that, as far as I know, they say that the document is real, but whatever's in the document, it might not be real. I do go into depth on this document because it goes back to finding this spaceship that is buried, right? It matches up with what Bob Lazar was saying. But Eric Davis, okay, he studies not only cosmology, he studies xenoarchaeology. And xenoarchaeology is the study of extraterrestrial civilizations by analyzing artifacts. Now, if you do a quick Wikipedia search on xenoarchaeology, it'll be quick to tell you, well, it's very limited because there are no artifacts. Mm-hmm. But how would there be an entire ology, the study of something where there's no artifacts?
Yeah, like xenobiology. Our friend, the late Chris Putnam, called that science in search of something to study.
Yeah. Yeah, and so when you start adding up all of these pieces, and now it's funny because in this leaked document, okay, he's pressing Admiral Wilson is pressing Eric W. Davis for answers, and he is told that you do not have. This is an SAP. This is a special access program, and I cannot tell you anything. And this is an admiral in the Army that they can't tell him anything.
A Navy.
And yes, thank you. And so what's going on here? What's going on here when they say that they had, and it's in this document as well, that one of the spacecraft was able to traverse dimensions, was able to traverse not only space, but also underwater. And so you tie that back into the Tic Tac.
Right.
What is this? Who is this?
Yeah, the Navy pilots who observed it saw it dipping into the water and without really leaving a splash, and without losing speed either. So it's very, very unusual. And again, you're talking about highly trained observers, not known for coming forward about weird sightings like this because it could impact their future ability to be deployed or get hired after their term of service is done, as an airline pilot or what have you. Oh yeah, this is the guy who saw those little green men. I don't have any doubt that these Navy pilots and the radar operators, in the case of the Nimitz incident on the USS Princeton, and there was a Los Angeles class submarine, if I remember correctly, that was in the vicinity as well, who also picked something up on radar that was detected. So I don't have any doubt that they saw something. The question is, what exactly was it, and why is this information being fed to the public now?
Yeah, and that's the question here too. I know one of the radar operator that was on the Nimitz with the Tic Tac incident. Now, years later, he came out and he said that after this incident, he started to have all of these apocalyptic type of dreams.
Right. He
felt like he was being like contacted, by something that was outside of him, and I hear you always say it, you can't make this stuff up, but this is why I think it's so important for Christians to have at least a working understanding of the story in the Bible that we take out between the little g gods and God, and of course Jesus and his mission of why he's actually coming back in light of a whole one world order being set up. And so I often think, does the alien stuff play in to the one world order type of stuff? Like, do these entities actually help usher that in, whether it's in physical form or just through what they've been doing and contacting, people that I like to call the alien prophets, like Stephen Greer Von Daniken and Sitchin, were they actually getting their information kind of like how maybe Aleister Crowley was getting his information through transcendental meditation. And we're seeing a lot of that too. I mean, Stephen Greer, he's all about transcendental meditation, and he'll tell you this. He'll say, and I'm quoting him emphatically, he'll say, they want to come and save us. The aliens. There's several ET civilizations that have technology. And they already have it here, and they want to help us go into a new golden age. And it's exactly the same thing as Aleister Crowley, going into the Eon of Horus, and it's just repackaged in a very different way. And this time it's accompanied by the news and the tic-tac and lights in the sky. And so the ordinary person that doesn't understand this, that doesn't know God, and then here I am, here your audience, as if you're listening to this, now you're in front of somebody who might believe an interesting and antichrist type of cosmology, and now you got the answers. You got the answers. Say, no. Let me tell you the untold story of Jesus. It's not Hillsong and Elevation Church here. You know what I mean? It's not self-help and the word of faith. This is real spiritual warfare coming to your front door. I promise you, I worked in the world for a long time as a Christian, and I was a manager at a coffee company, and the younger kids, they full-heartedly believed that the ancient alien theory was legit, and they would talk to me about it. But what about this? What about that? And then we have the answers to show them and lead them through that. Not saying they come to Christ right away, but we need to oppose all of this nonsense out there, because at the root, it's cosmology. So if you do have time, I can go into how I believe the simulation hypothesis overlays onto the alien deception, and that to me, it's pretty much where I'm going to take my channel in the next year or so, is talking about that, because it's a real scientific hypothesis. The simulation, they say it theory, but it's the hypothesis.
And this,
have you heard of that?
Well, you explain it. I think I know what you're talking about, but I don't want to assume that we're on the same page here. But it's again, like with the ancient aliens hypothesis, it sounds very scientific, unless you're actually an expert in either archaeology or biblical theology, like a Dr. Michael Heiser, who's one of those rare few who, like an L.A. Marzulli, Tom Horn, Steve Quayle, has done some study on the UFO phenomenon and compared that with the Bible to see where there's overlap. And that Venn diagram overlaps a lot more than most Christians think. I mean, as L.A. Marzulli found out back in 2008 when you had the Stephenville flap in Texas, and he sent out messages, emails, and letters to dozens and dozens of churches in that area of Texas, because that was a phenomenon, whatever those craft were, that was seen by a lot of people, hundreds of people. And so it was all over the news, mainstream news back in 2008. The Stephenville, and of course you got the Phoenix Lights going back to the 90s, but in 2008, relatively recent, and he couldn't get an invite from a single church in the area to bring him down to offer a biblical response to what people saw with their own eyes. Pastors just wanted to avoid it and pretend that it didn't happen. And so the assumption by people who'd seen it or heard about it, saw it on the news, was that, well, the pastor, and by extension the Bible, doesn't have an answer for this. So that means the Bible doesn't account for it, which means I can't trust the Bible, which means I've got to look elsewhere for answers, which is why you've got thousands of people going every year to Roswell and McMinnville, Oregon, and Eureka Springs, Arkansas, et cetera, to look for answers. These UFO festivals are not about how did the aliens come up with the technology to cross the distance between the stars. It's a spiritual quest. We saw that firsthand when we went to Roswell for the 70th anniversary. And again, as we're recording this right now, the 75th anniversary festival is ongoing as we speak. I guarantee you there are more booths there selling healing crystals and palm readings than there are, say, recruiters for MIT or Caltech. And certainly more booths presenting a New Age worldview than there are Christian churches saying, we've got the answer here in what L.A. Marzulli calls the Guidebook to the Supernatural. It's right here. We've got it. And we're happy to give you a copy. The churches in Roswell, sadly, according to our friend Guy Malone, who ran for mayor in the recent election there, said that the churches are more interested in keeping the tourist dollars coming in to support the local economy than presenting the truth of the gospel in refuting this xenobiological cosmology. But simulation hypothesis, what is it and how does it incorporate the alien agenda to into a deception?
Well, so the way that so I'll explain what it is first. So the simulation hypothesis, just in a really in a nutshell, is based on probabilities and anthropics, which is probabilities, and it has to do with cosmology, is what they're saying, and the forerunner of this is Nick Bostrom, which I highly recommend reading some of his stuff. He's a bad interview. I've watched several interviews, and he's just terrible. But his writings are genius, from his perspective. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But they're saying based on probabilities, and this is what he's saying, is that if one day we can come up with an artificial reality that is undiscernible from our reality here, that based on that probability, we would have to assume that we are living in one layer of a simulation. Okay? And I know it sounds really, really mind-bending, but it's all based on, like I said, probabilities. Well, why would we be the first ones to figure this out? Mm-hmm. Right? If we can figure it out. So then what they're saying is that there's, layers that we could be in like hundreds of thousands of layers of different simulations. Now, we understand as Christians, this is absolute garbage, but it is being regarded as real, as something that a lot of fringe scientists believe is actually real. So now, based on what I said earlier about cosmology, okay, let's say if I take everything that we understand about the alien topic and go 100 years into the future, right? What are they going to say about our cosmology then, based on more artificial intelligent algorithms that are going to be able to go through all of history's text and come up with its own cosmology? Okay, who then are the Elohim in simulation hypothesis? If people are, like I said, right now, ancient alien theory is huge. A lot of people believe it. You said 30% believe that we're being visited. So now we go into the future. Now you're going to have polls that 50% of people believe that we are in a simulation. Okay, so who's the Elohim then? Mm-hmm. What are the spacecraft then? It's very possible that they'll say that they're the creators of our simulation, and they're coming in to their own simulation to help us. And I really believe that, in the Matrix, the first Matrix movie, Trinity tells Neo that every time you see like an anomaly, like a ghost or an alien, it's a program doing something that they're not supposed to be doing.
Yeah, a glitch.
Yeah. And then even in the new Matrix, what I don't know if you've seen it, but it's terrible. But there was one interesting part where there was a different Morpheus. He was actually a program rather than the real Morpheus. And he was living in the simulation, but they came up with a way that he was able to manifest himself in the real world. So he was an AI version of Morpheus, but he was able to manifest himself in the real world. So I just say that, like, I really think about it. Like, what if these aliens came down, or 50% of people believed, hey, look, we're a simulation. And now these Elohim show up and say, hey, look, we've made your creation. We just need to help fix it. And then people just buy into it because, again, at the root, it's the origin story of our Earth, and I think that's a part of the great delusion that God lets people believe the lie. Now, what that lie is just depends on what time frame you live in. But just as a Christian, when I hear these guys talk about the simulation hypothesis, or just even the Big Bang and all of this stuff, and the trillions upon trillions of variables that have to come together if God's not in the equation. You know what I mean? It's beyond absurd that all of this stuff would come into being. And simulation hypothesis will tell you that we cannot figure out what is outside the simulation.
Right.
Why can't it be God? And then you put God into those equations and variables, it collapses all of those probabilities that you've been trying to work out in the numbers that you can never work out. And all of a sudden, you have the equation. The God equation comes in and collapses all of those different probabilities and makes it something that is real and tangible. I really feel like they always come right down to the end, and God is right there going, okay, finally, you're going to open that door. You're going to see me. And then they say, well, we don't know what it is. But it's not God.
Right. Which is not science, because if you're automatically excluding a possibility, you're not actually approaching this with scientific rigor. It is interesting, though, that this approach, that we're nothing more than a simulation, we are programs fulfilling our software programming, eliminates the concept of personal responsibility. Yeah. I'm not evil. I just steal stuff or break things or kill people because that's my programming. I can't help it. No, yeah, sorry, that's not one of the options.
And you're right on, because I did a video on the simulation hypothesis, but Sam Harris, he's a new age computer cosmology dude out there. He's got like a huge podcast, but he said this. He says that our reality, okay, I want people to really understand this. He says that our reality is compatible with a computer coder, an evil computer coder, coding in your thoughts. And he says this. And then he also says that based on that, and he talks about the free will. He says that there is no free will.
Right.
And he says he tells you that if you really understand that there's no free will, and these dominoes are just falling one to the next, then you'll be able to have compassion for the murderer and the person that just hurts people and does these things, because they had no say in it. There's an evil computer coder that's coding that stuff in, having them do that, because he even says it. He's like, your thoughts don't come from you. They come from the outside. He goes, you have no control over your thoughts. And I'll tell you from experiences, yes, you do have control over your thoughts. Now, there's an influence that's beyond us. We understand, Christians, that those are fallen angels and demons trying to influence our thoughts. So in return, we will act upon those thoughts, right? But we know that with the mind of Christ, we are able to take those thoughts captive and say, no, that's not coming from me. That's demonic. I love God. I love Jesus. I'm not going to take these thoughts as my own. Get out. Right.
Yeah.
And that's how we're to handle that situation. Not saying, well, hey, we just need to love people because it's not their fault.
Yeah. Well, I can speak from personal experience that Harris is not living a consistent, a life that is consistent with what he professes to believe. He went out of his way to share a video clip that another prominent atheist had posted of something that Sharon said on the Jim Bakker show last year, where she was discussing a demonic encounter that she had that sounds very much like an alien encounter. Okay, so something very much like and in fact, it was in the context of discussing Josh Peck's documentary on the UFO phenomenon, The Great Delusion. And Sharon said, well, yeah, I had an experience, and she described it. Very, very terrifying. She told me about it at the time. This was more than 15 years ago. It happened a few times and then ended. But Harris was among the atheists who put it out there as an example of crazy Christian fundamentalists who think that, these entities are real. But it's like, wait a minute. Now, if you actually believe what you're saying, Sam, about these thoughts just being coded by an outside force, why do you care? Why do you care? Why do you hold up my wife as an example of a person who's unstable and dangerous if we are all just being programmed from the outside? If we're all being programmed from the outside and this is all just a simulation, none of this matters. And that's really the danger here. We're not the ones. Christian worldview is not the reason they hold up Christians for ridicule is because the truth of the gospel is a danger to their deception. We said, no, wait a minute. As you said, Michael, we are responsible for our own thoughts. We can take these demonic thoughts and these impressions. I mean, all of us have thoughts that flit across our mind for a moment, but we take them captive in the name of Jesus Christ and refuse to give ourselves over to them. It doesn't mean we're never going to sin. Of course we do. The Bible tells us, the Apostle John wrote, if we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. We're not holding ourselves up as more righteous than anyone else. What we're saying is the Christian worldview explains the existence of evil in this world. And yeah, there are outside influences working on us to persuade us and to compel others to committing acts of evil. As we're recording this today, we're getting news reports of a mass shooting at a 4th of July festival, a 4th of July parade in an upscale suburb of Chicago. At least 5 dead reported so far as we record this on July 4th. So there are acts of evil. Intelligent evil is at work in this world. And what we're discussing today, this deception, an alternate cosmology that postulates anything from ancient aliens to evil computer coders as our real creators, is part of this deception, leading us to some really wrong conclusions about where salvation lies. And of course, as Christians, we understand there is no salvation apart from Jesus Christ. He is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one gets to the Father except through him. But again, Michael, I would say very few pastors out there are addressing this in the pulpits. And again, it's not a slam at them because of the time demands of being a pastor. So this is why I wanted to invite you on the program today to talk about this and just direct people your way, because I know that there are people who have experiences similar to what Sharon described, and they're not getting answers from their pastors or from their families or from their colleagues or coworkers who would hear something like this. And based on the abuse that she took on social media, it's no wonder people are ashamed or afraid to intimidated about speaking out when things like this happen. But there are answers out there. Project Revelation, where do people go to follow your video series and dig deeper into some of these strange aspects of the human experience that the Bible has answers for?
Yeah. So I have the YouTube channel. Just search Project Revelation. It'll take you right there. I do have a website that's I'm working on that, of changing the name over, but it still has the name Detox Babylon, and it's really just a landing page. But yeah, YouTube is the best place to find my material. And we've got lots of videos. And when I tell you I'm just getting started, I really mean that. Like, we've got so much in the works. I'm working on the video that you and I made together. It's going to be a mini documentary on the return of Saturn. And we're going to talk about some of the same types of ideas there. And that's what I do. I make little mini documentaries, and then I do like topical stuff as well. You'll find just like news stuff from a Christian perspective. And then, I drop maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks, I drop a mini documentary. So Project Revelation. Okay.
I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Michael Stibbs, host and producer of Project Revelation. Thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Derek.
Check the show notes for a link to Michael Stibb's website. At this point, it's still Detox Babylon. I'll also put a link in there to his YouTube channel where you can check out his video productions as he's using tools that the Prince of the Power of the Air often uses to reach our fellow citizens, our brothers, sisters, co-workers, colleagues, friends, family members. Why not use those tools in a similar way? In fact, that's why there's a camera in front of me right now. Well, check out his work. It is unique, compelling, and may reach people that aren't inclined to sit still for an old guy like me standing at a podium or read through a book, the kind we write, 300 pages with 500 footnotes. But people like Michael Stibbs and Trey Smith with the unique presentation may get through with the message, and a message that will make an eternal difference. We got a couple of things coming up. First of all, I want to ask you to pray for Sharon. As I'm recording this weekend, on Saturday, we rather ambitiously tried to move our big stand-up freezer. Well, it's not big, but it's a lot heavier than we thought it was. We tried to move it from the garage where it's been working for the last 7 years. And, my parents had it in their garage for years before that. So it's not like it's not used to hot temperatures. It was in South Carolina for 13 years before we moved it here. But, with the heat we've had recently, and the thing is getting old, it's more than 20 years old now. We thought, maybe we need to put that freezer in the laundry room instead. Well, in the process of trying to lever it up the steps in the garage, something went pop in Sharon's back. So she's been on ice and NSAIDs for most of today. So just pray that she heals up very quickly. She was on the wrong side of the dolly as we were trying to lift it. I was pulling and she was trying to lift, and it just we're not at that age where we're able to do the things we used to do, and sometimes it takes something like this to remind us. But she's having difficulty moving around today, so also pray that God grants me the wisdom to be the helper that I will need to be here in the days ahead. We're praying, though, that everything is healed up for her when we're ready to travel in just a couple of weeks, because we're going to be heading for the Dayton, Ohio area for the Go Therefore conference, July 29th and 30th. We'll be there with a lot of friends of ours, so we're really looking forward to this conference. Pastor Mike and Kathy Spalding are putting this together. Good friend David Paxton is also helping with the organization there, but we will see Pastor Carl Gallups, Pastor Casper McLeod, Coach Dave Daubenmeyer, Dr. Michael Lake, David Hevner, Kenny C., Tom Dunn, and Pastor Neil Peterson, whose church, the Harvest Revival Center in Brookville, which is a suburb of Dayton, is hosting this conference. Neil and I were both guests on the SitRep podcast, or SitRep Resistance podcast, this past week on YouTube, and he said some very nice things about me. So, Neil, thank you. I really appreciate that. Look forward to meeting you face to face. But if you're in the area and you can make it there, do take advantage of it. All the information is at GoThereforeConference.com. Online, GoThereforeConference.com. Registration is just $59. So if you're in Western Ohio, Eastern Indiana, please consider coming to see us, because this group of speakers, besides Sharon and me, is just going to be absolutely dynamic and really important. On top of this, they've got some others who will address some of the social engineering that's been ongoing the last couple of years, like Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, who will be there, Dr. Stella Emanuel, and others. So again, GoThereforeConference.com to get information. And if you can't travel, you can't be there, then sign up for streaming video and take advantage of the presentations that way. Mid-September, we'll be going out to California. More information on that conference as things become available. But L.A. Marzulli, Timothy Alberino, yours truly, and Pastor Dave Bryan will be the four speakers at this conference that, again, September 15th through 17th. But, again, more information when I've got a website to direct you to if you're interested in joining us there. And then we pray that you'll join us in Israel next spring. March 19th through 30th, Sharon and I, along with Messianic Rabbi Zev Porat, taking you around Israel and showing you some of the battlegrounds, the key battlegrounds in this long supernatural war. We had planned to go to Turkey this fall because of the political situation in Eastern Europe, the fact that it involves NATO and Russia, and Turkey being a NATO member. We just thought waiting would be wise, so we've rescheduled that tour to October of 2023. But you got information online at gilberthouse.org/travel. And that's where we're putting all the travel information for upcoming tours. gilberthouse.org/travel. And we hope to see you in either the Holy Land or in Turkey sometime in the near future. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to watch or listen this week, whether it's YouTube. Please subscribe and share the YouTube channel around, by the way, youtube.com/GilbertHouse, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, wherever fine podcasts are sold. Our announcer is the inimitable D.C. Good. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker.